projects in New England were in Niantic, Connecticut, and Pomfret, Connecticut. And living in Virginia Beach, we have the Chesapeake Bay. I'm very aware of how valuable water is and the meaning of what it means for the economy and just what it means to sustain that. So the fact that there's an aquifer issue here is not new to us. Wasn't new to our engineers. You'll learn quite a bit of the things that I would normally cover, but I'm going to go over in a little bit more detail. So this is an elevation of the building. It is 26,000 square feet. This is a pre-engineered steel building with a combination of a standing seam and a membrane roof, slab on grade, a mixture of wood, stone, stucco, metal, and copper. The seating is for 780. The height, the top of the cross is 39 feet. The top of the building without the cross is 30 feet 40 inches. The eve height is 22 feet, and the planning board wanted to know the tallest point in the sanctuary, which is 25 feet 9 inches. All of this is within the code. These are the side elevations, which have the same materials. For the sake of time, I'll get right to the floor plan. So the floor plan, you can see, has a sanctuary in the middle of the building. That will be fully insulated. There will be zero sound that penetrates outside the building during service. Also, there was some confusion about the classrooms. That was this going to be a school? Maybe I should write Sunday school classrooms, but this is not. Those classrooms are for the children while the adults are in service. Infants, toddlers, pre-K, middle school. There will be some rooms for adult worship, adult Bible study. So some churches do Bible study at home. New Hope does it both at home and in the building. There was also some confusion with, originally we had something called a warming kitchen. This is really nothing more than a coffee station. So you'll have coffee, tea, water, danishes, those type of things. There'll be no cooking, so we just removed the word kitchen out of from the original. Safety and fire life safety, especially there'll be all kinds of cameras. It's sad to say that I've never designed so much safety for children in my life. Over the last 5 or 6 years, it's just been incredible with the cameras and recording and having officers. Our church has 3 officers in the building during service, so we're very, very concerned about that. Fire life safety, this building will be sprinkled. The building also meets all the ADA requirements. We're using heat pumps, not propane, oil, or natural gas. There was, again, some confusion by one of the, I don't know if it was the peer review, where they were thinking it was a 500-gallon bottle tank. So just for clarity, that's not the case. So it's going to be designed to use electric with the generator and backups. And just as a sign of how community-oriented the church is, these generator backups are for extended power outages where it's not unusual to see a church used as a place for refuge when people are without power. And our church does that. I'm so happy to see that New Hope is going to be opening itself up to the community. I don't want to steal Rich's thunder, the site engineer, but when we were looking at the zoning bylaws, and I'm not familiar with Dover, and this is the first time I've encountered it, but I wanted to see, what was reasonable and how could we exceed those requirements. So the minimum lot size required is 120,000 square feet. We're over 800,000 square feet. The minimum setback, 30 feet to 70 feet. We're 129 feet to 355 feet. When you look at open space, the building coverage limit is 15%, we're at 3. Building parking and drive limits is 55%, we're less than 28%. And I just think this speaks to the care and stewardship that the church has as a part of the community. I'm going to take you back to the first slide to show you a couple of things here. So when you look at this, demonstrates 2 things. One is the screening. So as you're looking at it, it's the slide on the far right where the turnabout is. Behind that are the abutters' homes, and the code requires 70% screening. I'm looking at that. I don't know how you calculate the percent. It looks like a middle drawing, you see the red circle. That's the height of the cross from Long Pond Road. So again, what we're trying to do is have an impact, a small visual impact on, so I kind of think it's sad that we're doing everything we can to hide the church from the street and from the public. That's where the height of the church is. And then the rendering on the left, I put that side by side. You can see it's a little bit, it's the top of the roof is what you'll see from the street, not what's shown in the rendering. I want to speak a little bit more to landscaping than I normally do because of the aquifer and some of the things that, the concerns that the community has. So we hired Eastern Design and Landscape Contractors, and they had a presentation. There's that picture. So, our goal is to have 100% native plants, native planting, and the reason why we want the native plants is because of what they do in helping with the filtration system of the native plants. So you can see the size of that root system, and actually the next drawing really does show you in a little bit more detail how much better it is to have native plants than, say, grass. So even when you compare to what a home might have versus what this project will have, this will use a lot less water. It's really going to stabilize the slopes. That's why we're asking for that waiver. It's going to actually filter the water as it runs off the parking lot. And they don't need to be watered after they take hold. Just the natural rain in the area will be enough to do that. There's no pesticides or herbicides. Again, the root systems are so steep that they'll stabilize the size of the slopes. And the only lawn is going to be where the leaching field is, because that's where the recreation field is. The planning board asked us to try to have more than one use for parts of the property. And so you're going to have recreation above where the leaching field is. So again, trying to make the disturbance more concentrated as opposed to bigger over the property. And that'll be the only lawn that we have. Eastern Design is also going to be providing a maintenance program, and the maintenance program is designed to stop invasive plants from coming in and disturbing the purpose of why we're going through this exercise of having all these native plants. And so it'll keep the native biology alive. And in that presentation, it was just amazing at how quickly the foliage expands itself. It acts like a filtration system. It replenishes and restores the ground like one big rain garden. And so this is really going to protect the aquifer in ways that you might not see if it was just a 5-home subdivision. Also, the microorganisms that come from this clean runoff from the parking area. According to Eastern Design, there was a comment at the planning board that they would love to plant 100-year-old trees, but the reality is taking smaller trees and planting them is superior, because when you take a tree from a nursery and transplant it, you're cutting off the root system. It's not going to grow as strong, it's not going to grow as quickly. The president of the company, John Enwar, he's so passionate about all these things, how it protects the environment. If the board has more questions, we'd be happy to get more information from him. We did our traffic study prepared by Northeast Traffic Control Services. It says that Joshua Tree meets all the ADA compliant crossing, a private roadway constructed to town standards, and is classified as a local roadway. Net new vehicle trips during the weekday will have a 2% impact. Saturday, less than a 1% impact. Sunday, new vehicle trips is an 8% impact. Site distance analysis was conducted for both stopping distance and intersection site distance. The required stopping distances are exceeded in both directions. They also calculated other planned developments that were currently underway, and they were determined to have negligible impact on what we're doing. During construction, an additional evaluation was done for stopping site distance and intersection site distance, and truck turning analysis was completed. A maximum of 40 trips per day, Monday through Friday, with no hauling on weekends will occur. And as Bill said, that we think it'll take 16 weeks to do that particular part of the project. No issues were identified with the truck turn analysis. The conclusion of the evaluation was that the project would have minimal impact on local traffic operations. Our church uses off-duty sheriffs to control traffic when we're load and unload the parking lot. We have a 1,000-seat sanctuary. We have parking that's about 5 acres, with the more than what you guys have here, and it takes us about 10 to 15 minutes to unload the parking lot with the sheriffs. DPW report on the traffic and the DPW report under the general comments. We have met all of the general comments that they have asked us to comply with, and also want to address the parking requirements of what's required is 197 spaces. We have 360 spaces. Best practices for parking is 1 parking space for every 2.2 seats in the sanctuary, and that's what we've designed. The least that you can go with is 1 parking space for every 3 seats in the sanctuary. And the reasons are many. Bill mentioned some of them. It's also when you're transitioning between services, the ability to find parking spaces. Parking spaces is also essential to the sustainability of the church. If people can't find a parking space, they will pull into the parking lot and leave, regardless of if there's empty seats in the sanctuary. It's very rare that you see more than 2 or 3 people get out of the car. And a lot of times a volunteer will come early and the rest of the family will come later. So the parking analysis of 365 seats is very important. Also, we want to be prepared for Christmas and Easter and some of the bigger holidays so that there's never a problem. We're not going to be having any negative impact out on Long Pond Road or to the close community. Water and sewer will be septic and well, and thus will require minimal any future infrastructure or cost to the city of Plymouth. I'm sure our site engineers can go into that a little bit more. New Hope hired geotech firm McCardle Gannon Associates and the civil engineering firm of Planet Design Engineers. Our structural engineer used that report to make sure that we designed a sound foundation and the footings for the steel. And Rich has used that report as well for many of the things that he's designed. I hope that you'll see that we have tried everything to go above and beyond what's in the bylaws for development, commercial development in the RR zone. And I think we've done a very good job of it. The design is responsible. We've taken great lengths to protect the aquifer, to protect the site with natural plantings, to buffer from the abutters, and actually to create a buffer so that you barely see the building from the street. Minimal impact, except in what the church will do for the community. We hope that you will agree with this and vote in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Shaw. Mr. Sims.
Yes, Mr. Tabazinski, our project engineer, is now prepared to present.
Good evening, Rich Tabazinski with Atlantic Design Engineers. I'll go back a few slides here if we can. I just wanted to walk you through the site plans and some of the design elements that we've presented for in the drawings. So this is a cover sheet of the site plans. It's basically an overview of the aerial view of the project. And just so you know, the site plans that you have in front of you now have a revision date. They've been revised since the original submittal back in the fall. These revised plans were created to address primarily the comments from the DPW engineering department, and also to address the comments that were received from the planning board's peer review engineer, Beals and Thomas. So what we did was completed a revised set of plans, revised set of drainage calculations, and prepared some response letters and resubmitted those all to the appropriate agencies, and we've got copies of all that that was submitted to your department and the planning board also. In terms of the main crux of the project, though, there was some other minor revisions that were completed. We'd like to consider them as improvements to the design that was originally submitted back in the fall. And I'll just list a few of the changes here. There was a driveway on the eastern side of the property that had a pretty healthy cut that was completed prior to the church's ownership, and so as part of the grading plan of the project, we've filled that in. So some of the material that was going to be hauled outside is now going to be placed in that driveway cut. It had a small effect on the gravel removal, a little over 3,800 cubic yards. So the plans that we have in front of you now, the gravel removal has been reduced to 64,750 cubic yards, as opposed to the 68,000 that was originally on the previous original set of plans. We've also added 4 monitoring wells to be in compliance in accordance with your aquifer protection bylaw. These monitoring wells will be installed as the project is developed. They'll be tested quarterly in accordance with your bylaw requirements for some drinking water standards, and that'll add some assurance hopefully add some assurance to neighbors regarding the water quality the groundwater quality resulting from the project. In addition to that, we've also reduced the size of the septic system. After working with the architect, realizing that the church itself is not going to have a kitchen anymore, that reduces the sewage flow based on Title V calculations, so we revised the septic system accordingly. And one of the other minor changes was on the northeast corner of the property. There was previously proposed a structured amphitheater. We've removed that and proposed it as just a grassed area, a tiered area for gathering on the northeast side, as opposed to a physical structure out in that area. So those are some of the high points of the changes to the plans, in addition to minor things like for drainage and grading to address all the comments from the DPW and the planning board's consulting engineer. So to just orientate you a little bit with, this is an aerial view of the site. It's 18.5 acres, as mentioned previously. It was originally the site of the Yellow Maple subdivision, which is a 5-lot subdivision. As you can see, based on this area, parts of the property were partially disturbed and cleared for some of the home sites and driveways to those home sites. Very difficult topography. Showing the existing conditions plan, which is one of these slides here. A little tough to see, obviously, at this scale, but very difficult topography. Just to give you an idea, some of the elevations on at the end of the cul-de-sac, right where Joshua's Way, that elevation is at elevation 98, 97 and 98, and then at the rear of the property, it ramps up to elevation 158 at the southern corner of it. So there's a 60-foot difference in elevation from the front of the site to the very far corner in the back. The property is surrounded on the north, south, and west by conservation land, as you can see on the conservation land in this area. To the east, there's Long Pond Road and several residences off of Long Pond Road in that between Long Pond Road and the subject property. There's also a small wetlands on the northeast of the property. It's a small pond called Jenkins Hole. That's again shown there on the northeast corner of the property. It's located off the site, and no development is proposed within 100 feet of it. So just to give you an idea on that. This plan here is just a colored up version of the site plan to kind of highlight the areas that are being developed. As you can see, southeast side, so we have parking and then a small parking lot to the rear. There's 2 access drives that come from these parking areas down onto Joshua's Way. And there are several drop-off areas for patrons to come in, drop people off, and then proceed to the parking spaces. And in the rear of the building, at the very rear of the site, there's a recreational field, a recreational area. And so this plan shows in the lighter green is the areas in the site that will be either landscaped grass or restored areas that will be drainage basins or the recreational fields or side slopes for the grading. And the darker green areas, basically the areas that's going to be remain in the natural state, or in some of those areas that are disturbed now, those areas will be revegetated. So that, as you can see, we're providing some significant buffers specifically to the residences on the east side. And that's kind of how we cited things in terms of the development. As mentioned earlier, the project is in compliance with the zoning bylaw. We had a table here that was reviewed previously in terms of the parking requirements and zoning requirements. I won't repeat any of that information. Utilities on the site. This is our, let's see, the utility plan, which is the next drawing here. This is the grading utility plan, but as mentioned earlier, the site's going to be served by its own water supply well, which is located on the very southwestern corner of the property, at the very far corner of the property. That well will serve the project with domestic water and the fire service. There'll be a storage tank, an underground storage tank for the fire suppression system, which will draw water out of that tank in case of a fire for the use of the sprinkler systems. And so we've tried to locate that well as far away from abutting residential wells along Long Pond Road, just to alleviate any concern for those particular wells. And that also applies to the septic system, which is located again at the rear of the site, as far away from the residences along Long Pond Road as we can. There's basically, I think, the closest well to this septic system, close to the butting well to this septic system is over 800 feet away from the leaching field. And we've tried to locate the field underneath the recreational field, kind of giving it a dual use there so that we don't have to clear additional land, grade additional land, just to put in the septic system. Title 5 prefers leaching fields not to be under parking areas, so we've located it under the recreational field. We found that to be a very appropriate location. And as I mentioned earlier, the size of this field and the tanks associated with the septic system have been reduced, basically cut in half from what the original design was. And that's based on the Title 5 calculations for church with or without a kitchen. So this project does not have a kitchen associated with it, so we reduced the field accordingly. That reduced the sewage flows, water use, and everything that goes along with it. Lastly, stormwater. It's hard to see here, but there's 3 stormwater basins proposed on the site. 2 of them will handle the parking lot runoff, 1 will handle the spruce runoff. They've been designed to meet the 100-year storm. We've also gone through an extensive review by the DPW and the town's peer review engineer. They had some comments on the original design, and we discussed those with this revised set of plans and the stormwater addendum that was resubmitted. These stormwater basins take care of meeting the DPW standards, the town stormwater standards, and the DEP standards. They include measures for treatment and recharge of treatment of any runoff prior to its discharge into any of the infiltration systems. So we feel it's an appropriate design for this. We've tried to locate the basins as close as possible to the development to again avoid extensive clearing on the site and to avoid some of the higher areas of the topography on the site. And so that kind of translates me into the grading of the site and the earth removal, which is one of the reasons we're here in front of you today. As I mentioned earlier, the project is very difficult. It rises up from Joshua's Way, pretty much in all directions. It rises up towards the rear of the property and to the sides of the property. So what we tried to do is come up with a finished floor elevation and a general site grading that would kind of balance the visual aspects of the project and try to minimize the amount of earthwork that's needed and still have appropriately sloped parking lots and driveways and coming up off of Joshua's Way. So right now, where the building is sited, the elevations in that area are about 20 feet higher than Joshua's Way. Under existing conditions, the elevations there are around 110 to 120. So that in itself means we know we have to have the building elevated above Joshua's Way. There's no way to keep it level with Joshua's Way. So we raised it up appropriately. Right now we've got it at elevation 104, which is 6 feet above the elevation of Joshua's Way. That's the finished floor of the building. That provides for some fairly gradual inclines for the driveways coming from Joshua's Way up to the building and parking area, 4 to 5%. Parking areas themselves are graded away from the building so that they are higher at the rear of the parking areas than they are at the building. Again, that was done to reduce and minimize the amount of earthwork that we can. Those parking areas are at grades of approximately 3% or so, graded up towards the rear of the parking areas. The recreational field in the back is tiered higher than parking areas in the building areas. It's about 8 feet higher. So there'll be a slope between between building and parking areas, a slope up towards the recreational field. Again, that was done to tier the grading as much as possible to get that elevation in the back as high as possible to, again, minimize how much earthwork we have to do. So that is part of the reason we, based on that, we felt we've done an appropriate job of minimizing earthwork and disturbance on the site, but it still requires a certain amount of earth to be removed. And that calculates out to about a little over 64,000 cubic yards now. As part of that, in terms of trying to balance that up on the site, we have to basically raise everything up, which again creates some rather steep slopes going down to Joshua's Way. It also creates a higher visual impact in the butters, because I think we looked at it by average about 4 to 5 feet higher. Everything would have to be raised up about that much more to balance the site on the product, balance the earthwork on the site. So we didn't feel that that was necessary, or we felt honestly that the amount of gravel we're moving over on this particular 18-acre site is reasonable based on topography on there. So we've taken a number of measures to alleviate concerns of that type of earth removal. There's a